Hello and welcome to another edition of Bangladesh Today. Today we meet with Dr. Sreeradha Datta of the Maulana Abul Kalam Azad Institute of Asian Studies. Thank you very much for speaking to us. I'd like to begin by asking that, India and Bangladesh have recently signed two treaties, one on the extradition and the other one on the visa issue. How far do you think that these two treaties will go in improving relations between the two countries?
For India, the priority was the security vis-a-vis Bangladesh. So, extradition treaty naturally is, positive factor in what we've earlier done with them on the anti-terror front. So, I think for us, this is a huge gesture for India, and that Bangladesh reciprocated so well, and we've been able to a large extent address the issue that we've had of insurgency on the northeast, where we've seen earlier Bangladesh had overtly or covertly supported that those groups. So now it's rather clear that Bangladesh is very willing to support India in its anti-insurgency movement. So they've been really supportive. So extradition is just a continuation of that, the last few phases that we faced with Bangladesh, where they actually was able to tangibly help us in this area.
How far do you think that Sheikh Hasina has domestic support, of her people, of her political party in going forward in this extradition treaty and supporting us in cracking down on militant groups which are inimical to India's interests?
See, at one level, she came with a thumping victory that no political leader in Bangladesh has ever had. So the entire nation was with her. In fact, if you see the kind of voters turnout that we've seen in that Jatiya Sangshad elections of 78%, obviously the country was with her. And they certainly, and it's a fact that they do support her in several of the endeavors that she's, taken on ever since the election campaign was very well appreciated. And it's a factor that India is a large factor so far as Bangladesh is concerned, and there is also a constituency there which is not very pro-India, but at the same time Bangladesh and India, I think, are on the same page so far as militancy and terrorism is concerned. So
when you say Bangladesh and India, do you mean the governments of the two countries
and
or
the people? And the people. It's a fact that ever since Awami League's been here, there's been a very positive development of movement with the Indian government also. And there's always been a huge amount of people-to-people movement. We know that the kind of people-to-people contact that India and Bangladesh has, very few nations actually enjoy that on a daily basis. But at the same time, there were often issues that we thought that Bangladesh government was not being supportive, or we thought Bangladesh people didn't understand what India's priorities were. But so far as militancy, because Bangladesh also, if you recall, from 2001 to 2005 had a very bad phase, which of terror attacks and bomb blast. So I think Bangladeshis, and there I mean constantly the people, not only the government, certainly don't want to see that phase again. And they would do anything in their, which is they can to address that issue. And if they think that, they're able to also address and the same problem that India has faced within the domestic region, as well as, the covert support that Bangladeshi government at some point of time had given to the Indian insurgents, I think Bangladeshi people will certainly support that. And the feeling I have is that Bangladeshis do support this. I mean,
and I think it's kind of diametrically opposite than what's happening in Pakistan, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's a very different picture, really.
Yeah, where the government is in cahoots with terror groups, but here the government is cracking down and it's getting support from its people.
Its people, because we've seen that phase of 2001 to 5, where the government was obviously in tacit support, we would say, because we've had a religious political party who was a coalition factor. Yeah, the Jamaat. And it's a fact that several of these terror groups at that point of time who were unleashing that kind of terror in Bangladesh, with also they had several links with Indian groups also, was again, as you're saying, cahoot with the coalition government, which is headed by Khalida Zia. But ever since the caretaker government took over in 2006 end, and then of course 2008 elections, and we saw Awami League coming back. They've really tried to address the problem, and we've not seen this kind of occurrence of such militant activities or terror acts in Bangladesh. And similarly, I would say the first signal that Sheikh Hasina gave in terms of positive friendship and lending her hand out was actually when she said that I'm going to address this, the terror camps that Indian insurgents had terror camps in Bangladesh, which is obvious. And she actually tried to address that. We've seen how she actually threw out some of these militants who had for several long years established their base in Bangladesh.
How far has that been helpful for India to tackle insurgency issues in the northeast, the Bangladesh?
Oh, hugely. I would say not only Bangladesh here, we've also had very positive support from Myanmar. And today, if you actually look at northeast, except for 2 states really, the terror issue is not there. There are other issues which is common in terms of ethnic issue and space, and there's a communal factor which was the first time we've seen this spark a couple of months ago. But to a large extent, the terror or the anti-insurgency movement, the insurgency movement that we've seen in the northeast has been
because of Myanmar
and Bangladesh's support, because a lot of these insurgent groups were operating from bases both in Bangladesh and Myanmar.
So is there like some kind of a grouping of nations which are tackling terror in this region, or is it just on a bilateral?
This actually is on a bilateral basis. We've not been able to have in a sub-regional grouping here, or in the SAARC also we've not been able to, get the countries together to address the issue.
It's a non-starter?
Yeah, it's really a non-starter because it gets embroiled with domestic issues that many of the states don't want to discuss openly.
Can it be under a ASEAN umbrella, these?
I'm not too sure whether we could, because again, India is just a dialogue partner there, and Bangladesh again, we are not really strong on the ASEAN grouping. But this actually in the BCIM, in fact, we were hosting the last year's, which was the 10th BCIM meet in Kolkata, and I'm in fact just headed out for the Dhaka meet a week from now in Dhaka, which is the 11th meeting, where we of course discuss a lot of regional cooperation in terms of connectivity and other issues. But again, terror is not something which has been very welcome by all the states. BCIM is basically Bangladesh, China, India, Myanmar. It's a group of these countries. There's been a lot of positive development in terms of opening up, connectivity, and we've got the car rally which actually started from Dhaka through Kolkata.
That also faced a lot of threats.
Yes, it did, and there were some reluctant partners even in this grouping, but we've been able to kick it off. We are looking at trade in a large way in terms of opening up trade on the borders and things like that. But terror has not been something that we've been discussed at a multilateral.
Can trade be really something that can kickstart more understanding between the countries in this region and between common Bangladeshis and Indians in the eastern sector, in that belt?
Certainly.
Which will then pave the way for more interaction, better interaction?
Yeah, in fact, border huts is exactly that. We've thought that border huts would do that.
But that's taken so long and just so few.
Yeah, it's so few, but again, as you know, this part of the world is very lethargic. If you compare, I keep saying that it's not only Bangladesh's fault or India's fault. The entire subcontinent is very lethargic.
Which is why we haven't been able to do anything on Teesta.
That's right. Teesta is again, as I said, for us, security was for us the priority vis-a-vis Bangladesh. Once again, for Bangladesh, their priority is water. If I'm actually going to highlight which is the issue which is really critical for Bangladesh vis-a-vis India, it's water. So again on Teesta, the fact that we've not been able to sign the Teesta is also a reason why they've not been able to. Sheikh Hasina has a constituency. Yes, she has a constituency to, who she's accountable to. And naturally everybody has a feeling, whether it's wrong or right, I'm not judgmental here, but there's a very large perception in Bangladesh that Sheikh Hasina has done so much. What has India done? And that's a question that many of us who are constantly in and out of Bangladesh.
And it's a difficult answer to give, because we should have delivered on Teesta, isn't it?
I think so. I think, it's a fact that we were not able to have the data that we should have had with us when we went in for the agreement. So right now an interim agreement is something that we are actually looking forward to, because we really feel Sheikh Hasina, I mean, we know her term is coming to an end.
She needs to have something
She really,
to show.
I mean, let's be honest and frank about this, that she really needs to show that this is what I've got from them. They're extremely, the Ganges Water Treaty has really turned out very well. Both the sides are very happy with the way it's gone. So, but it's a fact in Teesta, I mean, I've recently just come down the entire route from Sikkim into West Bengal. Teesta waters is very limited these days, especially during, I mean, the dry season, which is the critical month actually for both the countries. When it's full flow during monsoon, we don't really bother, but it's the critical bit is during the dry season.
So then what's the option then?
Option is that both of us sit with the statistics, because Bangladesh needs to see for themselves that these are what is, I mean, we have to have a data collection, right, of the flow. And that's what, I mean, we went into agreement at that point of time without really having a very updated data with us. So I'm hoping, because in between when we were not able to, I think a lot of people actually got into it trying to ensure that a far more scientific data collection was done. But again, when you discuss water, you need to have 30 years of data to actually come to some kind. So here I am saying, at least if you have an interim agreement where in any case there is a constant flow, little or whatever, on the basis of that, if we can sign off something which keeps both sides happy, because it's a fact that it's also running through our some of our a lot of our villages in Sikkim as well as West Bengal, where it is used for agriculture.
Yeah, and then the politicians here in West Bengal are not going to be too happy about that.
That's right, naturally, because they also have a constituency that they have to answer for.
If I were to go into Bangladeshi politics now, with the elections not too far away, there's this demand for a caretaker government. Now that has been constitutionally declared null and void now. So now what happens? Because the Jamaat and the BNP are saying that they're going to take to the streets and put pressure on Sheikh Hasina. Will she be able to withstand this kind of pressure about hartals all the time and things?
It's really unfortunate. I mean, I have lot of faith in this Awami League government, and I'm extremely, happy the way India and Bangladesh have been able to mend some of the broken fences that we've had earlier in the 2000 to 2005 phase. But caretaker government is something I think the way, the country is not as, the election commissioner, as we say, is obviously not something will be able to pull off a, completely non-partial and fair and free and fair elections. Why would you want to hold Jatiya Samsad elections if it's not credible? So, caretaker government obviously was one body which did the work well. We know that ever since democracy's returned to Bangladesh, 1991, the caretaker government was there. Of course, they came in constitutionally legally in 96, I think through the 13th Amendment to the Constitution. Again, when Sheikh Hasina came on, she through this 15th constitutional amendment made that null and void. Judiciary also, in fact, gave another judiciary also agreed that this was unconstitutional. But I do not think that Bangladesh people, the opposition will never be able to trust at this point of time. I'm sure in years to come there will be maturity on both sides. But right now there's a huge trust deficit between the main political player who is in government now, as well as the opposition. Until that trust is, somebody has to close the gap. In this case, caretaker government is really seen as an impartial, a neutral body. I don't think the opposition will see the election commission right now as a neutral body. So I would actually think that I wouldn't be surprised at all if I see BNP and the Jamaat Islami or the other smaller political parties right out on the road opposing this particular stand of Sheikh Hasina's. And we've seen the imbroglio which happened in the end of 2006, which actually led to the caretaker government that stayed on for 2 years. They did a great job administratively on several fronts, but that's not how a country has to be run.
Because then also the fear is that if your caretaker government comes in and then the army finds a foothold to get in, just a wee bit of door open, there's always that fear of the army coming in and destabilizing democracy, getting in and bringing in martial law at some point of time, if at all the parties don't come to an understanding. Or no, or that phase is over in Bangladesh.
I particularly don't fear this. Okay. There is always that chance. In fact, in my first book on Bangladesh, I actually closed that the way that political parties are going, the trust deficit factor, that there is no stability in terms of having kind of multi-party political system, that there is keeping the door open. And that's where I start again on my second book on the caretaker government, that's where you kept the door open and the caretaker government moved in. But Bangladeshis will never allow that. And this is what you see. The caretaker government is so fascinating because you actually saw the army run the place, right? We've had Fakhruddin Ahmed, a wonderful chief advisor, but the entire government for those almost 2 years was run by the chief of the army, General Moim. And there was also talk about how the -2 formula, as you would recall from caretaker government, where they were wanting to do away with the two ladies, the Netris as they're called. Awami League without Sheikh Hasina, BNP without Khalida Zia will have very little political space. So obviously they realized, and it was completely, again, the intelligentsia was out there and civil society was constantly urging the caretaker government that don't do this. This is something that's really risky. So despite all these allegations of corruptions and whatever else the caretaker government had lumped on both the leaders, they were able to come out, right, and become again, head their own political party. The free and fair elections were again happened in 2008. So similarly today, I feel that elections will be held. It's a fact that if you give space to the caretaker government, there is a little inch you think that army would. The umbilical cord of the government and army has not been cut. That's a fact in Bangladesh.
Still?
Yes, I think there is, it has, every government has maintained an extremely, tried to maintain a good equation with the army because of that fear that the army might move in.
But the current, even the general level officers today, they probably joined the army after after partition with Pakistan.
No, I'm not saying the umbilical cord with Pakistan. I'm saying the umbilical cord of a government and military. See, from the time of 1975 to 1990, you've had military government in Bangladesh in several forms or the other. BNP ruled it through Ziaur Rahman. Ershad came on for a couple of years. He had Jatiya Party. So that cord, you've seen how BNP, or Ziaur Rahman to be precise, and Ershad again, had entrenched the political system with people from the army.
The other thing which she came to power was that she said that 71 war crimes, she will tackle that and make sure that it comes to a culmination. It's a huge, huge issue in the memory of any nation. And she has been able to deliver that, 2 convictions, 2 sentences delivered. Do you think that she in a way has fulfilled her promise, at least to a certain extent?
I would say so. In terms of day-to-day issues, there's a huge energy crisis there. She's not been able to deal with that in a really large way. But in certain ways, there's certain administrative issues that people are unhappy about. But this is something, while she did fight the elections on anti-corruption front, but this was the liberation war, the Mukti Juddha trial, the war crime trial was something that she really has been able to work hard on. And I know, this is one country who won their war in 1971, but they've just not had a closure. We are talking in 2013. Even today, Bangladesh liberation war is a subject which is open for debate. The closure would only happen once they're able to actually deal with this issue, because it's still the images of that war and what the collaborators did, what the anti-liberation people did is so crystal clear. That generation still lives in Bangladesh, and we have a young generation today now, the first time voters who actually can't recall the war really because they were born later. But again, many of the people who actually participated in the war, both from the army side as well as the civil society movement, can't erase that from their memory. So they've not had a closure. Often when we sit here, we think, for us, we've moved on, partition and we've moved on. Why hasn't Bangladesh been able to have a closure of their liberation war? This is because of the Mukti Juddha. And I think it's a wonderful thing that there has been some positive movement forward in this war crimes trial.
Thank you very much for speaking with us.
So they've been really supportive. So extradition is just a continuation of that, the last few phases that we faced with Bangladesh, where they actually was able to tangibly help us in this area.
How far do you think that Sheikh Hasina has domestic support, of her people, of her political party in Hello and welcome to another edition of Bangladesh Today. Today we meet with Dr. Sreeradha Datta of the Maulana Abul Kalam Azad Institute of Asian Studies. Thank you very much for speaking to us. I'd like to begin by asking that, India and Bangladesh have recently signed two treaties, one on the extradition and the other one on the visa issue.
Yeah, and that Bangladesh reciprocated so well, and we've been able to a large extent, address the issue that we've had of insurgency on the northeast, where we've seen earlier Bangladesh had overtly or covertly supported that those groups. So now it's rather clear that Bangladesh is very willing to support India in its anti-insurgency movement.
How far do you think that these two treaties will go in improving relations between the two countries?
For India, the priority was the security vis-a-vis Bangladesh. So extradition treaty naturally is positive factor in what we've earlier done with them on the anti-terror front. So I think for us this is a huge gesture for India.